episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith based topics from an anti racist, anti oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Welcome to The VUU, everyone. Thank you, beloveds, for hanging in there with us as we got our tech issues resolved. Thank you so much for being here with us on today's episode of The VUU from the Church of the Larger Fellowship. I am Christina Rivera, she, her pronouns, coming to you from the drab, dreary, and we had an ice storm this morning, and now it's raining ice, Central Virginia weatherscape. It's just so icky outside. I can't even tell you. And which usually means, tree limbs will start coming down and electrical and internet may get funky. So if I disappear at any point, you'll know why. Michael, how you doing?
I am doing okay here in Peekskill, New York, a little north of New York City. It is also a gray, drab winter day here, and we're doing our best to keep warm. If for some reason while I'm talking you hear a noise that sounds like a humpback whale is swallowing my house, that is my boiler, and it's going to be fixed tomorrow. It's working. It's heating the house. It's a long story. It will be fixed tomorrow, we hope. But when it does this, it's like all of the radiators throughout the house like vibrate, and it sounds like it's terrible. So I'm doing all right. How are you, Aisha?
Well, I don't have whale noises in my house, so that I'm thankful for that. I'm Aisha Hauser. I'm in Seattle, Washington, where the weather's the same. It is although not true. I'm gonna take that all back. I was about to say it's gray most of the time. It's not as gray thanks to climate change. So it is not nearly as I was told when I moved here I wouldn't see the sun for 40 days. Weeks. And that simply hasn't happened. There's been a lot of sun. Today's just regular overcast, not terrible. And I live alone it's my second year in my whole life that I live by myself. So if I hear whale noises in my house, it's a little terrifying because I don't have, I have to start calling people and going, are whale noises normal or is there an orca in my toilet? I don't know. So, I don't know what's happening. QuianaDenae.
Morning, good morning, good morning. I am talking to you from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And speaking of climate change, there is no snow on the ground here. It is December something-ish, and it's actually really terrifying. I'm not saying that I love snow, but I am from Minnesota. And snow is a part of the economy and how the world functions and how I know what's happening. And to not have it, it takes off it's off balance, right? Like it's December, there should be snow and there's no snow. So what does that mean? But it also means that I can travel more and do more because there's no snow slowing me down. It is raining. Aisha, I so agree with you. For the most part, unless my kids are here, I live alone. And if something happens in my house, I know every sound, every butterfly wing flutter, everything. So it is really interesting. And I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I have committed to be here once a month, and it's like the highlight of my month. So excited to be with my CLF fam. My friend DC, how are you doing over in the Penn, Pennsylvania?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing well. I'm coming to you from Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, in the beautiful Susquehanna Valley, where I am stuck weather-wise between Christina and Michael, which means I have, yeah, it seems to be coming down as ice or as slush. Like it apparently snowed in the night, but by the time I woke up, it was all wet and slushy and gross. And I have a metal roof on the house on the place where I'm living, and so I can hear it go tickety 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 tap on the roof. So it's coming down as little ice balls, and I have to say I'm not impressed. But yeah, Christmas is like next week. Oh crap, I'm so not ready. Yeah, and I just finished my like letter to the congregation saying happy holidays everyone, and I'm totally unprepared for the holidays. Ugh, ugh. So anyway, Christina, bring us back to something focused as opposed to me.
Oh, so we do not have a guest on this week's The View. So it is host choice. And so we've got some different UU topics for you. But QuianaDenae, I wonder if you could take us to the reflection question that you asked on your Facebook feed yesterday, because it was really interesting to read through the responses.
Christmas and messages. I've spent the last while, I'm not even going to put a time frame on it, really writing about Christmas and writing about holy days and what all that means, right? So just acknowledging like Christmas is December 25th. However, there's other holidays that function on a lunar cycle and not a Gregorian calendar. So how do we like throw in things like Diwali, which is Hindu, which happened in the beginning of November, and like make those folks feel included when actually, anyway, all of that is to say, I started to think about radical transformation. And I was trying to find words to bring it all in. And so I said, oh, I've been in my head too long. Let me ask the world what they think radical transformation is. And for me, I was talking about it, whatever context I'm in, I left a very open question. And I got 12 really different, beautiful answers. Like none of them were the wrong answer, because there isn't one. And none of them were the answer I needed. Some of parts of it were, but it's just, as I think about this time of year and the role of darkness and the role of light, and as I think about possibility, I'm just deep in thought about how can I be radical in how I'm transforming myself? How can I be radical in how I'm helping the world transform? What are my roles and responsibilities to this moment? So yeah, that's what happened yesterday, Chris. I don't know if you wanted me to talk more about it, but it definitely was an aha for me.
I think what was interesting to me at the moment when you had posted it and I didn't have time to respond, was Michael had given us, and this is a little teaser for you all for the CLF Christmas worship service. Michael had given us just this really interesting reflection question based on the work of Howard Thurman, The Work of Christmas. And I was at that moment creating my reflection or response, which was due yesterday or whatever. And it was all kind of coming together, like the idea that, so if you all don't know, The Work of Christmas by Howard Thurman says, when the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the brothers, and to make music in the heart. And that radical transformation, that idea that you were talking about of, trying to take all of this spiritual energy that we feel around this time of year and use it and allow it to radically transform us, was just like everything that was that was going on in me in that moment. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta engage with that.
Work, but so I'm like, my eyeballs are like, damn it, I already created my service. So I'm just like, where was this work? But, you know, it's interesting because the perspective at which I was thinking about it was from the perspective of Miriam and Yosef. And I'm intentionally using Arabic names.
Right.
Like, what happens in that radical moment when you know that you're about to give birth to like to Jesus, right? Like, what happened for her in that moment? For them both, what is that radically transformative moment of knowing what my body's about to do, right? And for Joseph in that moment to step into place, right? What happens to you spiritually, emotionally, physically? And so I think that we all, as this poem is noting, this work from Howard Thurman, have an opportunity to step into being radical and whatever that looks like for you, right? Like, you know, I'm not going to define radical for anybody else, but I know what that looks like for me in my life. And like, this is the time of year where I think we get to step into radical transformation, and we get to be that living transformation. It's not a dying transformation. It's not a submissive transformation. It is an active, it's taking an active place in change. At least for me it is. And so there was just, I've been really, really thinking about that. My congregations are going to get an earful about it when I do my sermon, but it definitely, when I think about ministry, when I think about being a parent, when I think about being a community member, when I think about things like, I'm going to just take us on a little bus ride. I saw this thing this morning, and I also posted it about this Arab gentleman who was raised in America, but he's watching the soccer game. And he sees this son with his mom and her hijab, and it's slipping, and they both go to fix it together. And he said, oh, I knew that feeling, right? That moment, there was this radical acknowledgement of his humanity and the way that he worships and the way that he loves and the way that he families. And wow, we all got to witness that, right? We all got to be a part of that moment with that community, with my siblings. And I got to be like, yes, get that meal, get that, eat that up, be thirsty for that, experience Muslim excellence. And when I think about how that community got to feel it, when I think about celebrating the birth of Jesus, the commemoration of the birth of Jesus, I hope that Christians can find radical transformation in that. And even if you're not, I hope that you're able to find what polyamorous people or people who love call compersion around that. I hope that you're willing to like take joy from somebody else's joy, right? Like, you don't have to be Christian to understand the joy of seeing of somebody understanding that in this moment, they will not go back to wherever they were. That there is absolute joy in knowing whatever happened when that baby opened up that doll, they are not the same person they were before. And I'm kind of excited about being in compersion with people who don't do things I do, love how I do, celebrate how I do. And so I'm kind of excited. Miss Aisha, what are your thoughts? I see your face doing the face things.
A couple things, but first is I want to define compersion, because I also learned it when I started my polyamory journey. It is finding joy in others' joy. It's the opposite of schadenfreude, which is you get pleasure from others' misfortune. This is pleasure from someone else's joy and pleasure. So one Christmas Eve, when at East Shore Unitarian Church many years ago, when there was 9 months where there was no ordained clergy, I led Christmas Eve, and I told the story of the virgin birth as told in the Quran. And most people don't know that the virgin birth story is in the Quran, A, and they don't know. It's a beautiful story. So Mary's freaking out. She's pregnant, divine, immaculate conception. So, and she knows the implications of what people are going to say about her. So from the womb, Jesus talks to her and tells her not to worry. And he's already, like when you brought up the scene of the soccer player and his Muslim mother, the idea of reverence for the mother is deeply embedded in the faith. And I mean, I grew up Muslim, I'm no longer, but definitely my mother reminded me all the time how it is a Muslim mandate to love your mother. But the story of Jesus saying to his mother, you will be okay. You will, just loving her from the womb and talking to her from the womb and the connection already there quite explicitly as told as part of that story. So yes, Mary gets more. DC, come on in. DC's just putting in the chat. Mary gets more narrative in the Quran than in the Christmas text. Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole show on the complexities and intricacies of how women are written about and treated, and we only have to look at Iran. Anyway, that's going all kinds of ways. But I think, yeah, I think transformation, and the thing about Christmas that is, I think, disappointing is how transactional it is. I mean, the receiving of gifts, we buy gifts, but talking about the tangible or intangible charge of action of this rebuilding, and Howard Thurman, the work starts after Christmas, the work of Christmas, of beginnings and transformation and rebuilding. I mean, right now it's been, I can't even hear someone say how are you without me saying it's a very charged question, and we have to acknowledge that it is not an easy question to answer, because no one is truly okay if we are connected in any, unless you are really, I mean, disassociating from everything happening. There's some level of okay within the midst of a slow moving apocalypse, right? And that, well, I went sideways pretty quick, but we do want to move to talking about mental health, because I want to quote, I found, and so,
But then you
oh,
didn't
sorry,
let
DC,
talk.
you're right, DC, go ahead. Sorry, you're right. I go, woo, I'm in the
Yeah,
loop.
that's all right. That's all right. You know, it's Christmas time. It's the holiday season, and yeah, I don't like. I'm doing a different kind of Christmas Eve service this year, but in years past, doing a typical lessons and carols service, I have always included the Hebrew text about waiting for a Messiah, and then I have always included a reading from the Quran about Mary, and it always freaks people out because they're like, "Wait, what now?" Um, but yeah, and it's, and you know, Islam is about service to God, and Mary is held up as an example of truly ultimate obedience and ultimate submission of and I think there's a note of it in there somewhere that's like, you boys wouldn't do this. Yeah, you boys would not do this. Mary did this. You boys just don't. Nope, 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 nope. You are not capable of this level of personal service and sacrifice and willingness to bear responsibility. And it's amazing stuff. It really is. And yeah, I mean, that's Maggie. That's Maggie's butt. that's the rest of Maggie. That's Miss Magdalene, who attends most of my meetings when I'm at home. So anyway, but yeah, that's all I had to say. It was just, it's like the Quran talks about submission to God and to be willing to do holy work, and Mary gets a lot of ink, as we would say in newspaper terms, gets a lot of ink in the Quran that she simply doesn't get in the Gospels, because the Gospels are focused on Jesus, not and his life and ministry and death and resurrection, as opposed to his origins, and just how, like, none of that would have happened if Mary had said no thank you, in that story. And in all of the stories, she was given a choice, and she said yes. So that's badass, like Gabriel showed up. Like, anytime Gabriel shows up in your life, things are about to get really weird. Like, Gabriel shows up, Sarah, congratulations. It's like, what the hell, right? Gabriel shows up, shit's about to get weird. And so Gabriel shows up and says, you've been chosen to do this thing, but if you don't want it, it won't happen. And she says yes. Like, yeah, all right.
So Michael, what was it that inspired you or drew you to this Howard Thurman work, as we were thinking about the Christmas service?
You know, I've always since I found it, I've loved this piece, because when I think about Christmas worship, especially in a Unitarian Universalist context, my question is, what bearing does this worship have on our lives today? Right? So what does this story, this ancient, powerful story, say to us today? How does it instruct us to live our lives? How does it shape the radical transformation that we are called to make manifest in the world? Right? So Howard Thurman just gets to that in this reading, which I love it. He gives us instructions, right? He's done his work. He's a theologian. He is an excellent theologian. He has read his Bible. He has studied his Bible. He has read his history. He knows his stuff. He was a civil rights pioneer. So he knows the struggles that are happening in society. And he says, here are the ways in which we are called to make the hope that the Christmas holiday represents real in the world, right? Because it's not just going to happen. It's not just going to happen. It's not just going to like come down, like the angels are not going to like descend from the heaven and make everything good. We've got to make this real in the world, which means it's our work to do. And yeah, I've often included it in Christmas services. Often it's like it's a good benediction, right? We've had this wonderful la 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 Christmas service. We've sung a lot of songs and it feels really nice. And as we're going out the door, okay, here's your job. It's a great benediction for Christmas. And this year I was thinking about Christmas at CLF, and the fact that we have a team at CLF who all have different viewpoints and voices. And rather than just ask you to read someone else's work, I thought, let's unpack this one work in 7 unique voices, right? So what if you come to Christmas Eve at CLF, or Christmas Day at CLF, or December 26th at CLF, because we do our worship on Mondays too, you will experience 7 CLF staff people, ministers, part of our ministry team, unpacking the 7 lines of what Howard Thurman says the work of Christmas are. So Aisha, Chris, and I, and our 3 learning fellows and our pastoral care associate are each taking a line. And to me, it's just this opportunity for a depth that we rarely get at Christmas. So QuianaDenae wants to say something.
Yeah, I want to jump in because I think y'all can tell me if I'm wrong. I'm writing for Kwanzaa as well, right? And that's for CLF. Okay.
Yes.
They asked me to write, they gave me a date. I just am doing what I'm supposed to do. We'll worry about the back end, who gets it later.
We are also having daily Kwanzaa worships led by Lucretia Williams, our learning fellow for worship.
And so for me, it's been interesting as a polytheistic person to be looking at Christmas and the messages of Christmas, but also looking at the messages of Kwanzaa and extracting those and how they overlay, how some things are different or the same. So the talk of Christmas is great, but there's also Hanukkah. There's all these other things that have these points of intersection where I'm also. So for me, I started writing about Christmas, but then as I write about Kwanzaa, I also have to think about where radical transformation in Kwanzaa. Where is that turning point? Where's the beauty in that celebration? Because for me, they're not one and the same by any means, but they dovetail each other. They support me as a spiritual person. So it's good to hear that CLF is doing the Christmas, but just know they're also doing Kwanzaa, and I'm in on that.
And we're doing the solstice and a New Year's Eve releasing ritual and New Year's Day party with Aisha and Chris. So yeah, we get to do it all, which is one of the blessings of having a team that everybody can take a part.
I think it leads
And
to
that everybody brings their own, everybody is able to bring their whole self to their work at the CLF and be able to, to share what it is that they want to share out in the world, and to connect people, together in the way that they know how to connect. And it's not just, within this one bubble, it's within everybody's whole self. So that makes me super happy. QuianaDenae, you were going to say something.
I was just going to go back to something that Aisha said around mental health. And so all of this sense of connection, all of this sense of meaning making we're doing also feeds into the messages around our mental health. In cultural and larger cultural community, not just Black community, a gentleman who was on Ellen and a DJ and used music as their form of liberation, passed away. He and I'm going to be tender and gentle as I walk this word into the conversation. He unalived himself, and so this is, I think, a tender moment as we talk about the things that are happening, the energy swirls of this season, to not talk about how some folks, this isn't their season. This is not their time to shine, that they may be experiencing depression, seasonal affective disorder, the pressures of the holiday, all of those things get piled up. And so I just have a tremendous opportunity to talk about mental health, to talk about mental health realities, to talk about ways to reach into support. DC, I don't know enough about the Newton anniversary. Can you actually speak to that a little bit as well, friend?
Sure, I can speak a little bit. 10 years ago yesterday, a guy walked into an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, with an automatic weapon and killed 16 first graders and a handful, or might be more than that, and a handful of adults before taking his own life. And I remember thinking in that moment that maybe this is the thing that will make us do something about gun control. And I remember I went to a candlelight vigil that Friday night, because it happened on a Thursday, and I went to a candlelight vigil on that Friday night, and I talked with a little girl. I don't remember her name, but she gave me her candle. It was a little, one of those little emergency candles I could keep in a kitchen drawer. And I was over in Watertown, Massachusetts. I was still in seminary. And I used that candle to light the candles, remembering all of those lives lost the following Sunday. Back when lighting that many candles was sort of a new thing to us, it was a new and powerful thing. Now it's just sort of like, oh, it's the thing we do when a bunch of people get killed. Yeah, but I took the candle that this little girl, and she was like 7 or 6. She was the age of those children that were killed. And I remember I wrote a sermon with some help from a bunch of friends about about gun control and about gun legislation, and about how people who are afraid reach for things that make them feel safe, whether it makes sense or not. It's not a rational thing. When you're afraid, you reach for the thing that makes you feel safe. If you are on a ladder against a house and the ladder starts to fall, however, you know it's a terrible idea, you will grab the light fixture on your way by. You know, that's just how that goes. And I remember I won a fancy award for that sermon. And I preached it all over Hell and Creation. And after about a year, it was a few months later when Congress finally got around to some sort of legislation about gun control. And it turned out they did nothing. And it was in that moment that we realized that Congress was willing to sacrifice first graders for NRA money. And for people to have unfettered access to guns that make them feel safe, even though statistically they make them more vulnerable. And it's these like the holidays are tricky for everybody, right? Because there's so much pressure for perfection, which is ridiculous. But these anniversaries are held in our bodies. These anniversaries are held in our bodies. And I remember when I saw somebody post recently about 10 years ago, and I was just like, oh man, I felt that in my heart again. I felt that sick feeling in my stomach again. And I was aware of it, and I recognized it, and I felt it. And there are plenty of us who are experiencing those feelings, but don't necessarily remember why. We just know that our bodies and our spirits are in turmoil, and we just sort of write it off to the angst of the season. And it's that affects. I won't talk about the mental health of the young man that perpetrated that horrible attack, but I want to talk. But I want to acknowledge that that sort of thing affects the mental health of everybody who experienced that, whether through media or in person, and it's not been addressed. It's not been healed. There's been no resolution. Aisha, you were going to say something. Yeah.
I think so there was a tweet that has been reposted by a lot of folks, a thread, and the original tweeter is Kay Vetchings. Justine says, join your union is the name of the person who posted. And I want to read the whole thread. It's short and it speaks to exactly kind of the larger picture. It goes, as someone who has been consistently going to therapy for years and working on myself, let me tell you, there is only so much individual introspection and healing you can do when the structural forces and external events contributing to mental illness continue acting on you. I've been waiting to tweet this for a few days now. If everyone needs therapy, then the problems everyone is dealing with are systemic, cultural, too big to be confronted alone between two people. It's actually a grave injustice to make individuals responsible for this. Individualized wellness culture gaslights people into thinking the problem and the solution lies within themselves. The truth is, we literally have a sick society, and it needs to get better for us to truly be well. I wish people realized that suicide prevention isn't always posting the hotline. It's adequate housing. It's basic health care, including dental and vision. It's affordable living, proper care in addictive addiction, proper care post-addiction. It's everything we need to live. And now I've also been impacted by suicide, by close friends who seemingly had the resources that we think everyone needs to have. So the issue, yes, is complex, and we live in a sick society because guess what? When 7-year-old white kids, their deaths were allowed to go in vain, then I knew this. I mean, not Black and brown children have been murdered from infancy, pregnant women. I mean, the horrors of death and genocide have been the staple of this country since its founding. So that part's not new. The part that definitely struck me is it was an affluent town with privileged white children, most of them. I'm sure all of them weren't, but most of them were white. All the pictures I've seen, and Congress still didn't do anything. And that just goes to the depths of even in a white supremacist society, money will win out. And we do live in a sick society. And however, I think one of the things that I work on is try to inspire people to connect to themselves. But again, that only goes so far. You could be connected to yourself. And if you can't afford healthcare, if you can't afford dental care, which impacts healthcare, how are our teeth and eyes not included in healthcare? I do not understand it. They're parts of our body. Anyway, I everyone else can weigh in. I wanted to read that because it was so impactful. And I believe the person retweeted it after the news about Twitch came out. He was only 40 years old. Anyway.
Thank you for your recap of my reflection on Howard Thurman's line to heal the broken. Because I won't give the whole thing now because you got to come to Christmas worship to hear it. But society is broken, and the ways in which our society is broken break people, and they break people. The brokenness is not distributed equitably, but it is distributed. It is distributed. And I served a congregation that was 15 miles away from Sandy Hook Elementary School at the time, and the Danbury congregation is closer. But I drove through Sandy Hook on my way to my guest preaching gig on Sunday. I passed the Newtown Sandy Hook exit, and I have to say I had to turn off the radio yesterday when, at the request of the parents of the children who were killed, NPR did a special commemoration of the parents reflecting on how what they would like to live on from their children's memories. And as the parent of a 9-year-old who I send to elementary school every day, who deals with lockdown drills, and I had to turn off the radio because it was too much for me to bear. Hearing these parents remember their 6-year-olds forever frozen in time as 6-year-olds, because they will always be. They didn't have the chance to grow past that. So it's hard. It's hard, and you're right, DC. The trauma lives in our bodies, and we don't always know. We feel it. So many of our beloved have died in the last couple of years, especially. It's been hard for so many, and we've talked about it on this show before. And I find myself sometimes catching my breath and going, something's not right today, and then looking at Facebook, and it's like, oh yeah, it's the anniversary of Alandria's passing. It's the anniversary of Hope's passing. Or for many of you, you felt the anniversary of Matthew Taylor's passing. They were not a close friend, even though every time I met them, they became more beloved to me. That it lives in our bodies, and it comes out whether we want it to or not. So
it's important to add in this moment, as we talk about the trauma that lives in our bodies, know that everyone carries trauma differently. So there's, reports that even 24 hours before, Twitch made that choice, that he seemed happy or things seemed okay. And the reality is because we carry things in our marrow. And for a lot of us who, I'm a person who has mental health realities. I know how to pretend to be okay. I know how to mask. I know how to lie. I know the tenor that you need to hear in my voice when I say, oh, everything's okay. And so just asking, and there's the adage, check on your strong friends. Maybe they're not okay. Know that your strong friends know how to lie to you. Because we've been doing it for a really long time, and we lie to ourselves.
Mhm.
Something on a personal level, I'm going to say something not bad, but just tender. I realize I literally haven't been around other people since Saturday. Like I get dressed, I go get my kids, I take them to their dad, I come back home, I might stop for food, but today's Thursday. I haven't left my house since I didn't pick up my kids yesterday. I haven't left my house since Tuesday afternoon. I came in my house Tuesday at 5 o'clock. If something were to happen to me, no one would know. And so but I'm alone and you see me on screen. I'm like, things is good. Girl's good. I'm writing my sermon. I'm doing okay. And so I guess I just want to put out there that what depression looks like, what isolation looks like in a time of COVID when we're supposed to be isolating, when we're supposed to be, watching out for each other's health. So we're watching how we're interacting. What looks like sadness, depression, isolation, not eating, all of those things. If you feel a worry for someone, respond to that worry. Don't brush it off. Don't say it doesn't matter. Send the text anyway. If they don't answer it for 7 days, send the text anyway. Some of our needs, my needs as a person who experiences mental health isolation, which I can own, my therapist would love this moment, is that sense that I guess I got off the bus, but I want to just say out loud, being in contact with people, knowing someone is asking about me, picking up the phone and calling, which Aisha's really good at doing, I have to say, it matters to have people just acknowledge you exist sometimes when you're so isolated matters. And I don't know what happened for Twitch, and I can't speak to what happens for people who make that choice, but we have space. Like I just want to say this and then I'll stop talking. So just like I have an intimate circle, there should be somebody in your intimate circle who's checking with you. Whatever your next layer is, like for me, it's like chosen family. There's somebody in that chosen family circle who's reaching out. I know who that person is. When I think about larger community, like my ministerial colleagues, I have people in that who will reach out. So if I'm acting out in any layers of that circle, right, of that ripple, there's people to catch me all along the way. There's people who I can look out for. And conversely, in my little circles going out, I have folks who I'm looking out for. I'm saying, are you all right? Are you okay? So I guess I'm not saying it's foolproof, but have people in different places, ways, platforms, voices who know you, who love you. Don't be afraid to say, I need somebody to talk to today. I need somebody to sit in a Zoom room with me while I cry. I don't need you to be my therapist. I don't need you to be my friend. I just need somebody else's eyeballs sometimes. And we forget how small that act of being in a Zoom room for a half an hour playing a song can be. I didn't mean to get on this bus, but I just want to say mental health matters to me. And mental health is more than just take a bath, right? Like I take a bath, but somebody love me and care on my skin and kiss my forehead and say I'm still a good person, that's a whole different kind of care, and I'm worthy of that. So
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
And the one thing I would add to everything that QuianaDenae just said is that, referencing back to what Aisha was talking about in that post, is that care has to be done in community also, right? Like it cannot just be up to me to take care of, that one individual in that community. I have to be able to reach out to the other individual and say, hey, have you talked with X, Y, and Z lately? Because they're not getting back to me. Can you, do you know, or have you reached out to them? Or, maybe it's something that somebody else has. I've gotten those calls where somebody's like, hey, somebody is popping off on in that Facebook group, and that's not like them. And I don't know them close enough to know whether I should, call them, but I know that you do. Can you get in touch with them? Like that's that community part of it that has to happen, because making us each individually responsible for each, it gets back to that. We can't do that without help. We can't do that without a community to help us care for one another. And that to me is why we go to church, right? Like why we form these communities to experience transformation together, so that we don't have people hanging out there all by themselves experiencing transformation on their own, right? That we're doing it together in a community. Otherwise, we could be, the NCAA, we could be, showing up for racial justice. We could be any of these places that are doing really great work, but we are doing transformational work together so that we can, hold that covenant with each other. So yeah, please, yes, reach out to that person, but also reach out to somebody in that person's network, in your network, and say, check in. I'm a little worried. Are you worried? You're not worried? You talked to them today? Awesome. Okay. You are worried? Let's do something.
I think we need to create community in which we can say these things.
Yes.
Right? Like it needs to be part of our culture. So like it's December 15th and my phone will ding at some point today is a ding every December. This is
We love you out there in VUU land.
and if you just heard my phone ding, that was the
ding.
December 15th. That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
Set a ding on your phones, friends. We love you. Take care.
Be well, everybody.
Love you.
Love you.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.